cháu ơi kịch côn cúng cùng nịch rèn xác luôn pràn cùng ăn sang bon lom lon chọn bàn bom piên bùm thưa đôi thon thò mà đá chỉ mà nung ai đắng quặp không bon bát ai squal vậy mình chẳng bán chẳng miên ông cal ai bán đôi thô nụ tơm dơn dung ba nâng khom lô phố vì đom son xóm chẳng trồn trong nền trộm nung nơi bóng bò đi bò.
We were trying to think of an exciting title for this exhibition, and in the end we came up with Cambodia. And two dates, 28th of November 1972 to the 7th of April 1975. So we had two bookends. Actually, it's three exhibitions together, and the themes are quite diverse. So we wondered how we could put it together as one exhibition. The only unifying theme is the fact that it's all in Cambodia, and it's all between those two dates. And it's a little bit of a strange title because Cambodia for me was basically just Phnom Penh at that time, because I couldn't go out into the countryside very far. The Khmer Rouges were controlling most of the country. So what we did was we brought all the photographs in and we unpacked them, laid them out on the floor and saw what kind of pattern they fell into. And naturally enough, it started off with the first day. And my first day in Cambodia was the 29th of November. I arrived from Bangkok via a bus and an old Peugeot 505 taxi packed with people in Sisapon, and it was after dark, it was night time. I was very tired, and there were lots of people crowding around me. I was the only foreigner in Sisapon, I think, and all these people were standing around asking me questions, telling me the history of Cambodia, all about the culture of Cambodia, the politics of Cambodia, and it was very tiring, especially as I was very tired to start off with. And I remember we were speaking in French. There were some people spoke French, and I remember pushing the door of the hotel shut to keep everyone out and say, sorry, I got to get some sleep. And the next morning, I met Mr. Big Smile here, and he had a motorcycle, and I had an idea of going to Bante Chamar. Bante Chamar is a big temple north of Sisapon, and it was accessible, which Angkor Wat was not at that time, because the Khmer Rouges were already occupying Angkor Wat. So he said yes, and we got on his motorbike, and we went up this really bad road. It took almost between 5 and 6 hours, and it's only 60 kilometers along the road to reach Bante Chamar. On the way, we met these gentlemen, and they said, or the officer with the sunglasses, Mr. Kim Hong, he said, well, you can't really go much further. It might be dangerous. So I said, well, I have to go because I'm an archaeologist and I'm on a mission. And I produced a book by Monsieur Cedez. It's the Guide to Angkor. And I said, this is my uncle. He wrote the book, and it's very important that I go to Banteay Chmar. So he said, well, okay, but we'll have to go with you. And so it was that I went to Banteay Chmar with all these boys. The exception is the guardian here. He was the guardian of Banteay Chmar. Looked very much like an elderly Bob Marley, maybe Bob Marley's grandpa. And so we walked into Banteay Chmar. Yeah, when we arrived at Banteay Chmar, there was quite an impressive building, but I thought, is that all? And then he said, that's the gate. So we went in, and it was overgrown with jungle. At that time, it hadn't been cleared at all. And out of the jungle, I saw these huge faces, like the faces at the Bayon, appearing through the leaves. And it was a fantastic experience. And then we walked, we had to climb over all the rocks and all the masonry in the temple, and came across this beautiful Avalokiteshvara, the god of compassion, with many, many arms. And this was particularly interesting because it's the beginning of the story of the Ramayana. Valmiki is being told by Brahma that he should write the story of the Ramayana. The hunter had just shot 2 Saras cranes, and Valmiki was weeping because he was very sensitive. Brahma said, you are sensitive enough to write the Ramayana. And so he did. When we went back a few years ago, we found that Valmiki's head has gone, and the hunter's head has gone, and some of the other carvings were in the same condition. They've been taken by looters over the period of 50 years. And the Avalokiteshvara, also the top of it's gone. This has been taken off, and that entire wall had disappeared. Some of it was recovered, and now it's in the National Museum. I don't know which parts. So this trip to Banteay Chmar was very useful to make a record of what was still intact at that time. When I was in Phnom Penh the first time, I met 2 Americans, and they were starting a school. So I'd been very impressed in Sisapon by all the energetic people who were talking. I thought Cambodians are crazy. They're so noisy and talk a lot and full of energy. And I'd come from Laos, where people are very quiet, gentle, laid back, and it was a big contrast to be in Cambodia with people so full of energy. So I thought, yeah, I'd like to stay here. And so I decided to come back early the next year and teach at the school. So I was not a photographer, I was a teacher with a camera. And the school was called ETAP, and it had 800 students at its peak, and even opened a branch in Battambang, which lasted 6 months. Students were from, those students were from Lycée Sitawat, but some of them were also ETAP students. The old man with the broom had beautiful gardening boots, and his t-shirt says Judo Karate. The photograph at the bottom is a student of mine who still lives outside Phnom Penh. He's got white hair now, and he took a photo of me with my camera. The photographs in this section are all in Phnom Penh, and most of them were probably taken in 1973 because I had a bicycle. And with the bicycle I couldn't get around very far, so I took a lot of photographs in the city. Later on I got a motorcycle, and then I could go out into the countryside, but that was later. The river, this is the, not the Mekong River, actually, it's the Tonle Sap River. And very far in the distance is the Japan Bridge, which had recently been destroyed. There's a scene at the bottom here. I would throw this photograph out normally because it's out of focus. There's nothing in focus here, but it's the only photograph of the riverside that I have. And lots of people out there with, snacks and ice cream. And this, I remember this happening when Lon Nol Air Force bombers were bombing the other side of the river because they said that there were Khmer Rouges on the other side of the river. So they were dropping bombs and strafing along the river on the other side. And people were watching. It was a spectacle with their snacks and ice cream. Very strange situation. Probably the Khmer Rouges were not actually there. I think it was a propaganda stunt. Yeah, and by the riverside, this is the other side of the river is the Mekong. So this is the widest part of the river from in front of the palace. Musicians are still there in front of the palace. The statue has gone long ago. It's been replaced by another statue, and then another, and maybe there's nothing there now. But it was in front of Wat Unalom. This street is now Sihanouk Boulevard, but it was renamed at this time as Avenue 18 Mars 1970, which is 18th of March 1970. That was the date of the coup, and you can actually, you can see the sign here. This is the Psa Gabgo, cattle slaughter market. You don't see any cattle being slaughtered in there, it's just the name. But it's still there. In outside Wat Unalom, an old man was sitting, waiting for a haircut. Doesn't really look like he needs a haircut. I liked his shoes, neatly displayed under the bench. And then in the market, some cheeky kids and a duck. The lady in the background was selling lottery tickets. This is the market, Sargabgo. There was plenty of food still in the market, and this is 1973, so not much shortage of food. Over the road from the school, happy ladies with great piles of vegetables. And this picture has the car, and it has the lady with the very typical sampot of that time, very typical Cambodian skirt. You can still see old guys like this fixing bicycle tires now. Two lots of musicians here. The ones at the bottom are classical pinpiat musicians by the riverside, and the ones above were wounded soldiers. One of them was blind, and they were playing also by the riverside, collecting money in a shell case from a big gun, 105mm howitzer. And above, there was lots of barbed wire in Phnom Penh. But now the barbed wire is around people's houses. At that time, I don't remember much barbed wire around people's houses. And when I went out, I didn't lock my door either. Strange. Things have changed a lot in that sense. Anyway, this barbed wire was because of the 1972 attack in which a North Vietnamese commando troop blew up the bridge behind them, came into the town, occupied the French embassy, commandeered some armoured personnel carriers from the military depot, and rode around town, and there was a running battle between the French embassy and Wat Phnom, the centre of the town. They were all killed or captured in the end, but the fact that the war came into Phnom Penh for the first time was a big shock. Before that, it was something that was happening out in the countryside. People didn't see it, but when that happened, it changed the whole atmosphere. But even so, people went on with their lives without worrying about that, because there's no point in worrying. This is on Monivong, one of the main boulevards of Phnom Penh, and I took 3 or 4 photographs in this case, which was rare, because this kid was so entertaining. He was mimicking me, and this is a vertical photograph, so I was holding the camera like this, and he was mimicking me. At the end of Street 294, there was a Van Mollivan building, or not Van Mollivan, but part of the Van Mollivan complex. We called it the White Building, and it was only recently demolished. Lots of cyclo drivers in Phnom Penh. There were tuk-tuks, but I don't think I ever used a tuk-tuk. It was either my bicycle or it was a cyclo. A lot of cyclo drivers were students, teachers, even government workers. This lady has been quite popular in the exhibition. Everyone notices her. But maybe without the caption, they wouldn't notice that she's a dentist. In fact, I didn't notice she was a dentist at the time I took the picture. I was focusing on her, And I loved the way that she was lying like this, and I didn't want to wake her up, so that was my focus. I didn't notice what was in the case or this contraption here, but much later on, I was looking at it, I thought, is she selling cigarettes? No. And then someone said, teeth, it's teeth. There are teeth in here. And then I saw the drill. This is a manual drill. And you stick the end in your mouth, or she sticks the end in your mouth and turns the handle. And when your tooth is taken out, you can choose a new one from here. She didn't wake up, luckily. And these ice shaving machines you can still see in Phnom Penh. I think it may be the same ones. They probably last forever. Very sturdy machine. In this picture is one of the 2 flies in the exhibition. The fly is on the woman's arm. This could provide a sort of a quiz for the kids. Find the 2 flies in the exhibition. And, well, at least one kid found both of them very easily. There's an interesting thing about it as well is that the fly was just there for probably a couple of seconds. And now it's in the photograph forever. That's what photographs do, preserve a moment in time. And what comes before and what happens afterwards is something different. This photo we chose for the poster of the exhibition because it's got everything of the atmosphere of Phnom Penh at that time. And the old gentleman is magnificent. And the fresh breeze is just blowing his shirt. You can almost feel it. And cyclo drivers, and in the distance a white Mercedes-Benz. That was the status symbol at that time, before the Lexus. The Grand Hotel Manolis. It's still there, but you wouldn't recognize it because the arches now have become a karaoke TV place. It's all colored glass and lights. Absolutely horrible. But it's the building, it's a beautiful old building. Famous thing about this building is that André Malraux, the famous French writer, who later became the Minister of Culture in France, when he was a young man, he came to Cambodia with the intention of stealing sculptures from the temples and taking them back, selling them, and getting rich. Anyway, he stole some sculptures from Preah Srey, one of the most beautiful temples at Angkor, brought them back to Phnom Penh, and he was caught. He was arrested, and Georges Grolier, who was a great protector of Cambodian culture, he had him under hotel arrest in the Grand Hotel Manolis for 3 or 4 months. Although it was called the Grand Hotel, it wasn't very comfortable apparently, so it was almost like a prison. These 2 photographs are all in the same street, which I don't know where it is now. It's called Hemtief Street, named after a hero of the resistance against the French, who was imprisoned in the 1930s. He was a monk. So, as he's a national hero from the colonial period, he was a national hero for every regime, the Lon Nol regime, even the Khmer Rouges regime, and all the regimes that came afterwards. But I don't think the street is still there, or it changed places a few times. That's the school office, apparently, and that's why all the kids are outside. And at that time, you could go and take photographs of kids in the street, and you wouldn't be arrested as a paedophile, and the kids wouldn't all go like that. So if they'd been doing that, I wouldn't have been interested in taking photographs of them, but they didn't. You know, they just reacted naturally, and they were beautiful and full of fun. I wonder where they are now. And then, yeah, this photograph speaks for itself. When she saw me, she didn't know, she for a moment she was frozen. And then the next reaction was panic. Now this street, I was told yesterday, this street may be round the back of Wat Phnom, so I'm going to go and have a look. It may still be recognizable. I liked these pictures because they had so much in them. They had the Siklo and the government worker in the Siklo, the civil servant, and the police and the military here, and the lady in the fashionable pants. It's probably a bar. And the old man pulling something up on a rope. Maybe it's his lunch, noodles for lunch. The next picture shows two ETAP teachers. This is Stephen Hedder. He's now a Cambodia specialist, researcher, and he speaks fluent Khmer. And his wife. And they were living in a house in the southwest part of Phnom Penh, which was heavily bombarded in the dry season of 1974. Yeah, so this photo was taken 1974, not 73. And we were digging a hole under the house because the shells were coming closer and closer. Luckily, they didn't need it, but we dug a hole for them. Around Wat Phnom, there was Khmer Rouges, one of the ethnic minority people from the eastern side of Cambodia, probably, selling medicine and magic charms to protect you from enemy bullets. So day-to-day life was, as you can see, it was quite peaceful. It seemed quite peaceful, and people were smiling, and as usual. And there were, of course, some rockets coming into the city, but not so many, and they were in certain areas, like near the American Embassy and near Lon Nol's house, places like that. But some of them landed in the markets or near places where there were a lot of people. And on several occasions, some landed near my house, which was conveniently placed between the river and the American Embassy. So if they fell short, they came down somewhere around my place. And this shows a bit of rocket damage. A rocket exploded in the temple, next to the temple. and people came out to see what had happened. I went on vacation for a week in the last week of 1973. I went to Khmer Rouges. Khmer was an uninhabited island. There was no one living on it. It was a sort of a little paradise island off the coast of Cambodia. We stayed there a week camping, and when I came back, the landscape had completely changed. These were all houses in here, and there had been a fire, they'd burned down, and it had been cleared in the space of time that we were away. And the local kids were out playing in the ruins. I don't know, but maybe some of them had lost their houses. But again, they don't look very unhappy, do they? More people, kids. He's wearing a key here. It's something like a talisman. It's to protect him from evil spirits. Yeah, a bulldozer clearing away the rubble. And another favourite photograph of mine and some other people is the girl on a bicycle. This was the first photo I took of her. I usually only took one photograph because of the scarcity of film. I tried to make every shot count. But in this case, I took 2 photos because I could see in the first one that she was special. And then the second photo, rubbish, because she looked down. There was not that eye contact anymore. The first photo was the one, not the second. And you like this one, don't you, Keiko? With the father and the kid. Some pretty girls. And she is in Bristol now. She married a friend of mine working for the British Council in Phnom Penh, and they left before the Khmer Rouges arrived. So they're both living in Bristol, England. Her friend just happened to be there at that time. But I think I only met her once or twice, and I know nothing about her. And by the way, there's the other fly. These two girls, one was named Annie and one was Ati. The one of Ati was taken by candlelight, and I took about four photos of her. The first one, she's trying to read a newspaper by candlelight, which I thought was very brave of her. It was very difficult. It was candlelight because there was an electricity blackout. It was quite near. This was actually 1975, I think. Yeah, because I was in my last apartment, which was in the tallest building in Phnom Penh. It was the 6th floor, the highest building in Phnom Penh. Well, there were no higher buildings. And there was a blackout, the lights went out, and by candlelight she was trying to read, I think it was an issue of Nokor Tom, Sok Paulin's newspaper. And the other girl, she was very sweet, and I heard that one of her friends came out of Cambodia to the refugee camps in 1980 and said that she had died during the Khmer Rouges. This is the only photograph in the exhibition that is not mine. A few others were taken with my camera, but not by me, but this was taken by a friend of mine, Naoki Mabuchi, and it was taken at Phnom Penh, which was a place where there was a lot of fighting, and it shows a soldier and his family huddled behind some boxes during the fighting. You can't see their faces at all, but it's the body language that makes the picture. And then I was trying to think of a way to go from Phnom Penh street scenes and people to the dancers. And this is the obvious candidate because it's got a dancer in it, and but it's not the classical dance, it's a dance hall actually, a dance hall in a country club, dance floor, and it was heart-shaped, very romantic. But this country club had been deserted for some time because there's been a lot of fighting going on around it, and it had become a repository for a collection of weapons from America, Russia, and China, all captured from the Khmer Rouges. So that takes us to the dancers. And these photographs are all from one performance which took place in late 1974. And it was probably the last performance in Phnom Penh before the Khmer Rouges arrived early in April next year. I took 6 photographs in the dressing room, and since then I've been scolded by certain people in the connected with the classical dance, and told that I shouldn't have done this and that I shouldn't have been able to do it. So how did I get in there? I think I went in the wrong door, because this was the Suramarit Theatre, the old National Theatre, and it was burned down in the 1990s. It's completely gone now, so I couldn't go and have a look at it. But there's a model, a very nice model, which shows that at one end of the building is the main entrance, and the other end, behind the stage, there's a little door and some small windows. And that might be where I found myself, because the only available light was coming in through these windows. And this was the second picture. The first picture, I walked in and I took that picture. And then I stepped back and I took the one that shows the windows. This dancer, we couldn't find out her name for a long time because she was a folk dancer. She wasn't one of the classical ballet. But the other dancers were more famous. This one was one of the dancers in the Apsara dance, and her name was Yuvana. And this was Menkosoni, who later became Secretary of State in the Ministry of Culture. And she was dancing the Buong Swong, which is a dance for rain or peace. In this case, I guess they were dancing as a prayer for peace. Yeah, in the corner here, there's a contact strip. And the point of having the contact strip there is because it was a way of dating the film. Sometimes I took a film out of the camera and put it back in again because of the scarcity of film. And I might have done it in this case because the first three on the film are from a motorcycle trip. And one of them shows my friend Joe Sedlacek. And then we've got the first picture of the dancer. And then these are all dance photos. And that was the end of the film. And I thought it was 1973, late 1973. But then Joe, who came back to Cambodia to visit, told me, no, it can't be because I didn't arrive until 1974. I said, that can't be true. You must be mistaken. It's your memory, mate. And later he sent me a photograph of his old passport, and it had a stamp entry into Cambodia, June 1974. So he was right. And that placed the performance a whole year later than I thought. Memory is a very strange thing, especially after 50 years. Yeah, and that makes it more important actually because it was probably the last performance in Phnom Penh. There were very few public performances because of the danger of bombing. Public places were not thought to be safe. Anyway, two more pictures in the dressing room and taken with available light and no tripod and no flash and a lot of luck because they're in focus, and I caught the moment when no one moved. And then I went to see the performance, and that was actually more difficult because there was more light, but they were moving. And I had to shoot at fairly low speed. So many of these photographs are out of focus, but they show they show all the principal dancers of that time. This dancer, and in the center here, is Bophana Savai. And Bophana Savai was the dancer who took the place of Princess Bophana, who was out of the country because she was with Sihanouk in China. So this was the second in command. Bophana Savai took her place as the Apsara dancer. That's Buang Swan. That's the Buang Swan with Min Kosoni in the main role. The other dancers were nearly all identified either by Bophana Savai, by Sopelin Shapiro, one of the best dancers of the modern day, and by Pantar. We get to Pantar in a minute. This is the only photograph I've got of the folk dance. I took 3 or 4. Yeah, I took 3 or 4 photos of the folk dance, but only one came out. Why? Because they move faster. The classical dance was relatively slow, and there are lots of pauses in the movement. So I always took the photograph at the point they stopped moving. But with the folk dance, it's difficult to do that because they're moving all the time and they're moving fast. So I was just lucky to get that. It's quite clear. This is the Moni Mekala dance. It's a battle between the giant and the goddess of the oceans. And they're fighting for this crystal ball. This dancer, Kembunak, was a very famous dancer, and she was quite old at this point. She must have been about 40, quite old for a dancer, because in 1949 there was a photo taken of her when she was 14 years old. What happened to her? She died during the Khmer Rouges. Some photographs that I took didn't come out. They were beautifully focused, but unfortunately their heads were cut off because I could not see through the viewfinder. Maybe I had the camera stuck on top of something about that height and side of the stage, and I couldn't see what I was actually taking a photograph of. This is Panta. Her full name is Sisapanta Prom, and she was the secretary and receptionist at the school where I was teaching. And she was also a dance student. I didn't know that. She saw that I had a camera, and so she formed a plan. And her plan was to get me to take photographs of her going through various dance poses. She asked me to take photographs of her at her teacher's house for documentation, and I thought that was interesting. And then she said she would pay for the film, which was even more interesting. So she did. We got the film, and I went to her house. She disappeared for a few minutes, came back dressed in the practice costume for the dance, and she'd already fixed up a backdrop, and the room was very small, so I was sitting on the floor with my back against the wall and my elbows dug in and holding the camera as still as I could and taking photographs at about 1/30th or 1/60th of a second. And most of them came out. I think, well, all of them came out. This is just a selection from the 20 or so photographs of Panta. Now, because she had bought the film, I gave her the film. I gave her the negatives, and I gave her one set of prints. I kept another set of prints, and they were just postcard-sized prints. In April, April 75, I left Cambodia. She stayed. She went through the Khmer Rouge regime. She was working in the countryside like everyone else. And she kept the pictures, she kept the photographs in her sarong. And this was quite a dangerous thing to do. And in fact, the Khmer Rouge found them, but they didn't know who they belonged to. So they destroyed them, which when she found out, she was very upset, but they didn't get her. But she also kept her school ID card, which was completely unnecessary, having an American school ID card that could have got her executed. And she kept it all the way through the Khmer Rouge regime. In 1979, when the Vietnamese drove the Khmer Rouge out of Phnom Penh, she went back to her house where she had hidden under the floor, she had hidden some books, documents, and the negatives for these photographs. But the house had been destroyed in the fighting, and everything was burned. So the prints were gone, the negatives were gone. And she wanted to use these to make a book about the classical dance. And she made the book. Eventually in 2003 she published a book, but without these photos, of course. Anyway, when I came back to Phnom Penh in 2014, I found her, I showed the photos to other dancers, and I found out that she was a teacher at the Royal University of Phnom Penh. Not a dancer, but a teacher. And of course, I had a set of the prints. I still have my set of the prints. So we scanned the prints and made these enlargements from those. Considering the circumstances, they're not bad, especially to blow one up this big, we were able to do. And now we get to the photographs from the countryside. And down by the riverside, they were carrying, I think it's river weed, but what they were going to use it for, I don't know. For fuel or maybe for fertilizer? And no one can tell me, so we don't know. But they still do this now, I'm sure. So I used to go out on the countryside with, sometimes with Joe Sedlacek, one of the other teachers. We had 2 motorcycles. This village scene is quite typical, you know, wherever we would stop in the countryside, the whole village would come out and have a look, but always the kids first. The kids come out and the adults stay watching what's going on, and then later they might come out too. So we went out in the countryside in different directions. I got a motorcycle, I rented a motorcycle from the beginning of 1974, and every weekend, it had to be weekend because I was working in the week, every weekend I would go out on one of the roads around the city. There were 4 or 5 main roads to the north and south, and I could, depending on the season, I could go out 30, 40, even 50 kilometers along the road. But eventually you'd come to the front line where the fighting was. And at night you couldn't go anywhere outside Phnom Penh. It was too dangerous. This was a trip to Udong. Now we could go as far as Udong, and Udong had been the center of many battles, and the Khmer Rouges had taken it, Lon Nol troops taken it back, the Khmer Rouges had gone back and forth many times, and so it was, there was a lot of damage. And this is the giant Buddha on the top of the mountain at Udong. Now the heads, later when I came back in the 90s, the head had gone, and then half the body had gone, and now it's completely gone, and there's a new, smaller figure. And they rebuilt the temple. The only original part is the pillars. They still remain. And I think the same trip, Udong, we stopped at the only place we could get a drink, probably warm Coca-Cola or warm Sprite. And on the wall behind us was something that had been written by the Khmer Rouges, which I think it says, "Nothing can reverse the wheel of history," which was a favourite of the Khmer Rouges. And here it's a symbolic mess of palm leaf sutras on the floor and empty ammunition boxes inside a temple building. This was on the way to Udong. There are Cham villages, the Muslim community. And this Cham village had been completely destroyed. The mosque was in pieces, in ruins. And then we found some soldiers who had captured Chinese rockets. And these were the rockets that were falling in Phnom Penh. So something like that had fallen near my house. In this temple, well, you can see the temple building itself was completely shattered, but the Buddha image inside was hardly touched. It was almost intact. At the time, I thought there was something symbolic about that. I don't know where these pictures were taken, just out in the countryside. Which road, I don't know. But the woman and her children, she's sitting counting her money, which was not very much. And the child here is suffering from malnutrition. The kids set up their own casino. I think definitely the kid on the left looks like he's going to make a lot of money out of the other two, if they had any money. And then this is one of the few sequences. It's where I took 3 photographs in a few seconds, and because it comes out as a story. Soldier on the front line playing the trokmai, the Cambodian violin, and he's playing very well. You can see from the audience reaction that he was quite popular. But then an officer came along and took his trokmai away from him and started to play it, possibly very badly, because look at the expression on his face. Or maybe he just maybe he just wondered if he was ever going to get his instrument back again. In the countryside, somewhere not far from the front line, the Lazy Club. And these were, well, off-duty soldiers. He's wearing a Hawaiian type shirt, but he's got military pants. So maybe just put the shirt on for recreation purposes. We saw something in a field while we were riding along. So we went to see what it was. And it was a CBU. CBU means Cluster Bomb Unit. And it was empty. These things, it's a canister which opens in the air, and it spills out about 250 small bomblets, which bury themselves just under the ground over a wide area, and then they explode if you step on one. And because they're small, it probably won't kill you if you're an adult, but it'll blow your leg off. And then your friend or comrade might come and help you. So that means 2 men are out of action. This is the idea behind cluster bombs. It's all mathematics. And if the cluster bomb doesn't work, you can see that it's got a guarantee. This says ranti. It's actually warranty. And it's guaranteed for 365 days. Expiry date, October 73. And if it doesn't work, you can send a nice letter to Monfield Industries, USA, and you can get your money back. In theory. Anyway, this one had worked because it was empty, and then we realized we were standing in a field and the bomblets were somewhere around. So we walked very, very, very carefully back to the road. Yeah, and cluster bombs are banned by most countries, except one of them. The USA is one country that hasn't banned them, hasn't signed the treaty. Yeah, 2 pictures here. Standard equipment for the Lon Nol army, an armoured personnel carrier, something like a small tank, a 105mm howitzer, big gun. Now, some of these were captured by the Khmer Rouges and in some cases sold to the Khmer Rouges by corrupt Lon Nol army officers. And the Khmer Rouges then used them to fire shells back into the city, into Phnom Penh. Here we have a brick kiln in Takamau. I don't think these are there anymore. Huge kiln for making bricks. Yeah, my friends Francis and Sina, the girl in the photograph, the other photograph. Different sides of Phnom Penh. Here you can hardly see any evidence of the war, but in this photograph taken near Takamau, south of Phnom Penh, you can see the results of the American carpet bombing. From March or April, I think, to August 15th, 1973, Nixon and Kissinger were responsible for dropping as many bombs as they could on Cambodia. Congress stopped it in August, but for 6 months there was continuous bombardment all around Phnom Penh and throughout the rest of the country. And hearing the sound of the bombs, or more or less more feeling the sound of the bombs. They were far away, but it was like the sub-bass on a big speaker, and the windows rattled, and to think of, this was 20, 30 kilometers away, to think of what it would be like under that bombing. I remember wondering what would happen to someone's mind in that situation. And I think what happened later with the Khmer Rouges might relate a lot to their experience of being bombed for 6 months. A soldier was shacked up here in the temple building, so that's his bedroom. The road to Battambang is one of the main roads. And the road to Battambang has improved a lot now. At this time, the Khmer Rouges had blown out large sections of it to stop armoured personnel carriers and trucks and buses from going towards Battambang. Even on a motorcycle, this was as far as I could go. Phnom Penh in glorious colour, 1973. We had to put 1973 because people coming in and seeing this splash of colour in the middle of the black and white somehow seemed to think that these must be taken yesterday. And all the others were old photographs. But this was the only colour film that I shot in the 2 years that I was here. And I don't know how I got the film. Colour film was difficult to get, it was expensive, and but I got one, so I used it to take pretty pictures. There are not many people in these pictures. It's all postcard pictures, isn't it? What you get from a tourist postcard shop. In front of the Royal Palace there was a monument. That's the White Building. In the centre is a statue of the Monkey King. I'm not sure if it's Vali or Sugriva, a Monkey King fighting a buffalo demon. And the Monkey King won. This is the Independence Monument. The statue was south of the Independence Monument. But it's not there now. It's been replaced by a lion, a small lion, and not very interesting lion. But this very interesting statue has disappeared. So where is it? We've heard it could be in Kampong Cham, but we haven't been there to look yet. Or it might be in some rich person's garden. This was the season of the flame trees. So it would be April or May. There were many flame trees all over Phnom Penh then. Nowadays there are not so many. Street 240 next to the palace. And this is a Vietnamese tank. The Vietnamese tank was a souvenir from Lon Nol's first campaign. It was used as propaganda to show the victory of the Lon Nol army. Pailin. I think early in 1974, it was in the dry season, in the cool season, so maybe January, February 1974. I had a chance to get a helicopter ride to Pailin. I knew nothing about Pailin, just that it was outside Phnom Penh, and I jumped at any chance to get out and go somewhere different for a change. So my girlfriend had she knew a helicopter pilot, and she got us a ride on the helicopter to Pailin. We arrived late in the afternoon one day, and the next day we spent in Pailin. And we stayed in this place. It was an army barracks, and these were new recruits. You can see that only I think one of them's got a helmet. Yeah, one of them's got a helmet. Some of the others have got uniforms or bits of uniforms. How many people have got boots? Well, probably not so many. This was the general situation with the Republican Army. I think we had coffee at the nearby B-52 cafe. When we went back to Pailin, people thought this was very funny, the B-52 cafe. They said, no, it's not there anymore. But there is a B-52 coffee shop, which is completely different. It's full of young teenagers and listening to latest pop music. This beautiful building in Burmese style was, I've been told, was probably the house of a rich gem merchant. Now in Pailin, there were lots of Shan and Burmese people, gem traders, who had come from Burma, now Myanmar, to Pailin to find, buy and sell precious stones. And they were given the covering name of Kola people. Kola people are not actually a single minority. as the Tourist Information Bureau might tell you now, they were just a mixture of people from Burma, different parts of Burma, who came because of the stones. And they started coming in the late 19th century, and about half the population at least were Kola until the 1940s or 50s. And then Thai and Chinese and Cambodian traders slowly pushed them out. So by this time there were still Kola people in Pailin, but not so many. But their buildings were still here. And this is the gateway to the temple on top of the mountain. This is the mountain, and the temple is here, and the gateway is down behind these trees. That might be part of the gateway, with nagas outside, and some lions, and a dog, a little boy, and a girl with a big smile. Well, things have changed a little bit. The nagas are still there, but the front of the gate has trees growing in front of it now, so you can't see it. In the temple at the bottom of the mountain, a separate temple, on the roof of the temple, I found these guardians. And one of them was quite conventional, but the other one was holding an unusual weapon for a legendary giant. And it actually looks like a Russian rifle rather than an American one. AK-47 Kalashnikov. Well, when we went back, we found the guardians, but the weapon had gone. And now he's holding a rather boring looking, something that looks like a vegetable. It's a poor substitute for the AK-47. We showed these pictures to the head monk, and he had never seen them before. He had never seen the gun. One interesting thing here is that in the old picture, there are a lot of houses behind the temple. But in the recent picture, there's nothing. The houses have all gone. It's usually the opposite. You know, houses are built, so recent pictures have more houses in them. But in this case, the opposite happened. Maybe the location of the town moved somewhat. I don't know. Well, we found a river where people were panning, and there were a number of these suspension bridges. In this photograph, we've got lunch here, and panning full of gravel from the bottom of the river. This was interesting, but I was not prepared for what we came to next. We came out at this place in the river where there were hundreds of people panning for gemstones. Going back to Pailin, we couldn't find a river like this at all. It's now become a small stream. There have been hydropower projects, the watercourse has changed, and there are not many gemstones anymore. And there we have people She's got a coconut under her arm here. She used the coconut to pour water through the basket, wash out some of the loose gravel, and she might find some stones. They used to find sapphires and rubies, but even at this time, the best they could expect would be garnets, probably, semi-precious red stones. And next, I had one film, as usual. I had one film, and so that's all I took in Pailin in that one day. But I took 4 photographs, almost in the same place. And it was partly this girl. I don't know why she fascinated me so much. Maybe one reason was that she didn't look at me. Because actually, nearly everyone was looking at me. I was the only foreigner in Pailin, I think. And so I attracted attention, especially as I had a camera and I was taking photographs. But she didn't look at me, yeah. This is very characteristic. In Pailin, on every street corner, you would see people like in this pose. So they were holding a gemstone, looking at gemstones like this. And in their top pockets would be bundles of dollars, American dollars. It was like a cowboy town, really. Lots of money. The prices were twice as much as Phnom Penh, and it had a nightlife. It had Filipino rock and roll bands, and yeah, it's the same girl. But finally, she did look, and she didn't look very friendly at all. I hope she found a nice precious stone, and she was able to keep it. Because these people were not freelance; they were working for. They had bosses, they had supervisors. Now, this guy is Kola. He's Burmese. You can see because of the headdress, the clothes. And there's another one here wearing this turban. Yeah, they would be Kola people. And I didn't know anything about the Kola people at that time. Now, here we have a happy gentleman, and I guess he's happy because he found something good. Whether he was able to keep it or how much profit he could get out of it, I don't know. The guy behind him, sitting up here, is one of the overseers. He's not working much. He's just watching the others to make sure they don't pocket any gemstones. Over the other side of the river, this was probably, I think he was the big boss with his Hawaiian shirt, his golfing cap, and his dark glasses. They were watching me, and they were watching everyone. So I decided not to be too obvious taking photographs of them. Well, my last day in Phnom Penh. It came rather suddenly because I thought I was going to stay until the Khmer Rouges came, because there seemed to be no way I could leave anyway. There was no point in me staying, practically, because I had no job anymore. School was closed, and so there was no reason there for me to stay. But I wanted to stay. I didn't want to leave. My students had to stay, and my Cambodian friends had to stay. And I thought, you know, I could have left before, but I didn't. So I was resigned to the fact that, wait for the Khmer Rouges. But then an offer came up of a place on an empty rice plain. Now, rice plains were C-130 aircraft, cargo aircraft, that were coming into Pochentong airport every day, a few times a day, and they were dropping rice on the runway, dropping rice and munitions, and then they would take off with people. There were no seats, but you could get a space on the plane. So I had to decide whether to do this or not, and I decided eventually because my neighbours, my Cambodian neighbours, thought that I was a CIA agent. They thought I was working for the CIA because I didn't go to bed early. I stayed up late at night. They could see the light in my house late at night, and they thought, what's he doing? Must be sending secret messages. Of course, I was reading books or listening to music, but when I found out, when my girlfriend told me that the neighbours thought I was CIA, I just thought it was funny, and I didn't contradict them. And it wasn't a bad thing at that time. They didn't mind me being a CIA agent. And but then I thought, if the Khmer Rouge come to town and all the foreigners are there, the Khmer Rouge might start asking questions about the foreigners, and my neighbours would say, oh yeah, he's a CIA agent. So it was that decided me to play safe and take the plane out. And in retrospect, well, I always regretted that I didn't stay, because my friend Nauki Mabuchi, he stayed. He took me to the airport, he dropped me at the airport, he stayed, and he ended up in the French embassy with the other journalists, and he took film and photographs of the Khmer Rouge coming into Phnom Penh. And he came out 3 weeks later, and I met him in Bangkok. But in retrospect, if I had stayed, there's a good chance that I would have lost my camera, lost my film, because I'm not so smart as Nauki, who hid it in different places to get it out. And I might have lost all the negatives for these photographs as well. So I think I made the right choice in the end. We had to wait behind sandbags for the plane to come in. And then when the plane was on the ground, it dropped everything, and we had to run across the airfield and get on the plane. And there wasn't much time, because the Khmer Rouge were just the other side of the airport. They were firing mortar shells into the airport periodically. And this was the last view from the plane. The plane hadn't opened back because it was a freight plane. I think no windows, but an open back so that you could see straight out. And that was goodbye to Cambodia. When we arrived in Bangkok, I was blinded by the lights and the noise and the traffic and the people, and it was a completely different world. And we went into Bangkok. I waited in Bangkok. I met Naoki Mabuchi in Bangkok when he came out, and he had some money. The rest of us didn't have much money. We didn't make any money in Cambodia in 2 years. I left with $50. And anyway, he hadn't made some money because he'd taken this film and all the news agencies wanted it. So he loaned me the money for an air ticket to Japan. And that's how I went to Japan and stayed there quite a long time.